Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo here, and finally we're coming close now to the deadline for game week 4. Anyone that's been listening to me since pre-season will know that this was my plan to free hit in game week 4. I'd set up with the intention to play the free hit in game week 4. For example, no Liverpool players in my team, knowing they played Burnley this week, and I'd probably want Mo Salah. And nothing's really changed in the interim period, so not actually activated the chip yet. But I'm going to. So I'm on free hit game week 4 strategy. And this pod is going to be looking at my decisions around the sort of players I'm considering and what my current draft is. So get straight into it. A little free hit spotlight section first around my thoughts before sort of looking at players for this free hit is that I think naturally when you're playing a chip, you look at how you played it before, learnings from that, good and bad. But this free hit's obviously a little bit different. I imagine I'm not in the minority here when the free hits I normally play are to either cover a blank game week or to attempt to maximize a double game week. I can't think of any time in the past, to be honest, where I played a free hit in what would be just an ordinary conventional game week. But obviously, because we have 2 this year, we've got an opportunity in the first half of the season to play one at what would feel like an unusual time. So there's no blank game week that we know of right now to play a chip there as a defense strategy. Equally, there's no doubles to really go after. So we're sort of flying in the wind a little bit here, flying blind, and there's not really a strategy to follow. So I think you have to be open-minded here that all strategies are possible, all formations are possible, all levels of aggressiveness are possible. And so that's the second point here in this spotlight is what's your risk appetite? So I think when you're targeting a double game week with a free hit, you're in full attack mode. You're looking at really upside players, etc., etc. Whereas if you're playing in a blank game week, you're just basically you're trying to maximize, but you know there's a fixture shortage. You've maybe got one eye on safety and security. You're not going full out on the punt picks. For this one, try and work out where you want to be. Do you really want to go after the sort of punty players? Look for sort of these types of midfielders that we know can get big hauls. Someone like, I don't know, Noni Madueke for Arsenal, for example. I think we've seen him get 20 points in the past for Chelsea. We think he's going to play here with Saka still injured. He's the sort of player that could get 2 or 3 attacking returns against Nottingham Forest. Do you want players like that? Even though there's obviously caveats to picking someone like him. He is a minute's risk. He maybe doesn't have it's a good fixture, maybe not the best fixture. And is he worth spending 7 million in midfield on someone like him? So there's upside picks like that. Equally, how sort of not negative do you want to be, but there's a lot of players here who you could own on a free hit, but I don't think they're essential. Someone like Joel Pedro is probably a good example of this. I think most managers would probably agree that if you're looking to play 2 or even 3 strikers this week, he's on the short list. He's in the discussion to be one. I think most managers would look at it and think there's probably 3 strikers better than him for this game with more upside than him, with better possibilities. In the case of Joel Pedro, he's been obviously away with Brazil, a lot of long travel over this international break, hasn't had much rest. He's got an away fixture against Brentford. Can we do better? I think there probably are some examples you can think of right now for this game week of strikers that might be better than him. But he's very highly owned. So are you going to use this free hit as a way of covering some highly owned assets, someone like Salah, someone like Semenyo, someone like Joel Pedro, and think just my other players in my starting lineup this week will be better than the non-free hitters in terms of what they have? Is that enough? Do we need to view this free hit in quite the aggressive way we normally would? Are we looking at this and thinking, if I can just get a green arrow from this chip, that would be a success? There's been many game weeks, I think, in the past, in previous seasons of FPL, where I've looked at my team and thought, I don't really like this. Just circumstances have meant I've got a lot of players that don't have a particularly prime fixture here. I've got players that I don't maybe have a good bench. You just look at your team and think this looks like a red arrow week for me. And in those weeks, you'd think, oh, if I had a free hit, I could do this and this. This is basically what this opportunity feels like to me. And I want to be slightly aggressive, but how am I going to be aggressive? Am I going to put a triple up in my defense? That's quite aggressive, and put all your eggs in that basket. Am I going to play a couple of double ups in defense and put the eggs in two baskets and be a bit less risky, but still maybe in a different position to most conventional managers not playing a free hit this week, who maybe don't have double defense anywhere, and things like that. So I'm asking myself those sort of questions before I start. What am I viewing as aggressive this week? Is it punty midfielders? Is it minutes risk attackers? Is it double or triple ups in defence? Which ones of those do I want to take, which could give me an edge and a bigger possibility of a green arrow? And the final question really is, what team am I keenest to maximise? So it's a bit easy to try and spread yourself too thin. There are, we'll get to it in a second, quite a lot of fixtures this week where the outcome looks to be swayed in one direction more than the other. Obviously, you take a stance here on some things. There'll be certain teams you'll want a definite triple up on. There'll be certain teams you think I quite like a double up on them. There'll be certain teams you think I wouldn't want to let that slide without having any ownership from that team. There'll be certain matches you think I'm not really sure how this is going to go. Let's just avoid it. But I think you want clarity in your mind as well to start with. Which teams you're adamant you want three of, which teams you're adamant you want more than one of, and which teams you're adamant you're not really interested in, and then take that as a base. So I've been reminding myself of that before. I say, particularly in my case, the reason I wanted to free hit to start with was because before the season started, I think we thought Liverpool were the best team, the most likely team to win the league, probably the best attack, the most likely to score goals, etc. And they were playing Burnley, who had a strong likelihood of being the worst defence. I knew I'd probably want 3 Liverpool players against Burnley. I didn't want them in any of the fixtures around it. I ended up not having any Liverpool players. So that was my main reason for free hitting, is to make sure I could load up on Liverpool with full information. I've obviously got most of the information now, minus the press conferences. There are a couple of other teams I looked at. Crystal Palace. I've got Lacroix in my sort of normal team, but I probably thought I'd want more than one Palace ahead of Sunderland, albeit Sunderland have probably been better than what I expected them to be. Then you look at situations like Arsenal, where you think, I don't have any of them. I think I want some coverage. Newcastle against Wolves. Again, I don't have any. I'd like some coverage. And I've been trying to remind myself of these things. So if we go on to looking at sort of defensive options first, on the screen right now is the clean sheet odds for this game week. And as you can see, those coloured in green are 40% or higher. Those coloured in yellow are between 30 and 40. Those in orange between 20 and 30, and those in red less than 20. So my initial thought looking at this was there's 4 teams here that are in green. So clean sheet possibilities of 40% or higher. My focus should really be on those 4 teams. I wouldn't be against drifting into those teams at 30%. There'll be options for Fulham at 38% against Leeds, at Everton, maybe 31% against Villa. We know Tarkowski's getting DEFCON every game. Chelsea defenders might be an option for some. They're 36% clean sheet possibility this week. Even Pedro Porro, who a lot of us have, I don't think can be written off on a free hit at 31%. So there's options. But for me, with Liverpool at a 49% possibility of a clean sheet or probability of a clean sheet against Burnley, I think I want some of that. Arsenal at 48% against Forest. Palace 45% against Sunderland, and Newcastle 44% against Wolves. I kind of feel like they're the 4 teams that I want to be focusing on. And if I jump on again, I've sort of extended out the defensive data. So I've put all the teams on this slide at 30% or higher, but clear gap here between Newcastle, the 4th best clean sheet probability this week, 44% into Fulham at 38%. I think that gap of 6% is big enough for me to think, let's focus my attention on Liverpool, Arsenal, Palace and Newcastle. So what more can we learn? We've got the bookmakers odds here. Let's look at the XGC. I know it's a small data size of 3 weeks, but let's see where we are. We've got the best defence on data, Newcastle. Expected goals conceded so far of 1.58 makes them the best. We've also got Arsenal in this group, and they're second best, 2.22. Then Liverpool are 6th best right now, 3.17. Palace, 7th best, 3.67. I say Chelsea, I think, can be included here. 2.41 XGC make them 3rd best. It is an away fixture against Brentford. I wouldn't be against owning one, but I don't think they're as strong as the other 4 teams, 3 of which are at home, and then Liverpool is then playing Burnley. So Newcastle standing out here with the best XGC, say 1.58. They also happen to play an opponent with the worst XG in the league, so Wolves at 2.13 XG. So this tells me at the moment, based on data, 3 game week sample, small sample, we've got bookmakers odds at 44% on the Newcastle clean sheet, and data showing they're the best defence so far and they're playing against the worst attack. To me, it makes sense to have a piece of that. For those feeling, say, uber aggressive with their strategy and really looking at sort of maximising an opportunity, I wouldn't be against someone picking multiple Newcastle defenders. It could be Pope with Livramento, Pope with Share, or maybe even all 3 of them if you're feeling especially punty, especially fruity, really want to chase something. But matchup wise, based on data, that looks like the best opportunity. Behind that is probably Arsenal right now, say second best XGC of 2.22, and they're playing against the 13th best attack in Nottingham Forest, 3.49. Obviously, this game's a bit awkward now because of the manager change at Nottingham Forest. So Nuno's gone and Postecoglou is in. What does that mean for the matchup? Are we going to get sort of similar range to what we saw at Tottenham, which is very different in terms of player profile and player expectation compared to what Nuno played at Forest? A couple of examples here. Under Nuno, Forest defended in a very deep block. Players behind the ball focus on defending the penalty box, suited someone like Milinkovic down to the ground. Under Ange at Tottenham, there was a much bigger emphasis on high lines and sort of condensing the play. Milinkovic wouldn't be suitable really in a high line. So he's one player that may struggle to transition if Ange repeats what he played at Tottenham. Sort of a bit the same with Chris Wood, who was used as more of a target man, obviously for Forest under Nuno. Sort of the main sort of focus of the transition. Forest would win the ball back deep, look to release a quick ball towards Wood, who would bring the ball down and then release the counter-attacking transitional players. And we know from those days at Forest, there wasn't much emphasis on pressing or anything like that, where Ange was very focused on pressing from the front, lots of energy in the attack. Again, not naturally something that would suit Chris Wood. So a bit awkward to predict how this game's going to go because we've got no evidence on how Ange is going to play at Forest. Is he going to try and sort of appeal to the Nottingham Forest fans with attacking football and go for it a little bit here? Or is he going to think let's just sort of not confuse the players too much and play in a way that the players are used to? Tottenham did play a bit like this in the Europa League final with Man United, a bit sort of this sort of deeper block, etc., etc. We could see it. So not sure what to make of this, but we've got, I'd say, the second best defence in the league that have only conceded a Szoboszlai free kick so far against a team that's not really been that potent in attack, say the 13th best attack. Just on the other 2 teams here, Liverpool obviously playing Burnley. Burnley are the 15th best attack based on data, and Palace are playing Sunderland, the 16th best attack. So we've got 4 great defences here. Bookies odds all above 40%. They're 4 of the best 7 defences so far in the league for XGC, and they're basically playing 4 of the worst 7 attacks for expected goals. To me, it makes a lot of sense to keep your defensive focus amongst these 4 teams. That's my learning. If we move on to sort of player-by-player profiles here, I've listed 10 defenders on this slide, looking at attacking output so far, and tried to bear in mind what we've seen on the last couple of slides. So 3 Arsenal defenders on here: Calafiori, Timber and Gabriel. We've got Fabian Schär from Newcastle, Van Dijk's there from Liverpool. We've got Lacroix and Munoz from Palace. So that's 7 defensive options from what I would call the prime 4 teams. I've also added Joachim Andersen, James Tarkowski and Chalobah from Chelsea for a bit of context here. So looking at individual player data, from an attacking standpoint, Calafiori is a long way clear as the best. 7 goal attempts so far is the best amongst defenders in the league. Obviously, if you chase it upside of defenders scoring would be an incredible outcome. His XGI is 1.45. No DEFCON points so far and not really anywhere near it. Teammate Timber, a bit the same. No DEFCON, 4 goal attempts and 3 chances created, 1.01 XGI. Strangely enough, third then is Joachim Andersen, who could be, if we're running out of budget on this free hit, I think he's one of the more interesting ways to save it, 4.5 million. because his XGI is 0.88, the third best in this list. He's had 2 goal attempts, he's created 2 chances, and he's got DEFCON in 2 of Fulham's 3 games. So lots of the data make him a solid pick. I wouldn't say an outstanding one, but he's got decent attacking output. He's got a strong possibility of DEFCON. Leeds haven't been the most potent attack so far. I don't know how much you really trust Fulham's defence. They weren't particularly high on the list for clean sheets last year. But again, he's a solid pick this week, especially if you want to play 4 at the back, even 5 at the back, and you're looking for a cheaper defender to include as one of your final options in this. At 4.5 to facilitate other things, I think he's a fair pick. Munoz next, 0.86, maybe sort of a bit below expectations so far. Just a 1 goal attempt, 2 chances created. He has got DEFCON once as well. I think he's quite hard to ignore, to be honest. We know what his attacking positioning is like based on last year. We know he's like someone likely to be sort of in the last line, making runs into the final third frequently. Considering he's at home and considering he's playing a team that don't have the best XG, probably a game you'd expect Palace to win. Their defence has been quite resolute in terms of clean sheets and things so far. He looks like the typical free hit pick to me. So I think he's quite hard to ignore, although the data is maybe a little bit below expectation. I thought he would have been higher than 4th on this list for XGI. Chalobah next with 5 goal attempts for Chelsea. Then we come on to the DEFCON guys. So Tarkowski's had it in all 3 games for Everton. So again, if you want some security in your team, you maybe want to play players with a higher floor rather than a higher ceiling. Tarkowski's probably pretty likely to pick up 4 points in this game week for appearing and getting DEFCON against Villa. Obviously, possibilities of a clean sheet. Villa have been awful from an attacking standpoint so far. He has had a goal attempt as well and does possess some sort of set piece threat. So again, not the worst pick. And then Lacroix, who I've asterisked because according to official records, he's only got 4 DEFCON points rather than the full 6. But against Aston Villa, he was given some DEFCON contributions after the deadline. So he would have actually gone past the threshold. But frustratingly for myself and other owners, we didn't get the 2 points for it because the game we could effectively already closed at that point. So on the sheets, it's saying 4 DEFCON points, but in reality, he's surpassed the threshold in all 3 games. So I think if you're looking for a defender that ticks the most boxes this week, I think it's probably him. I say Palace rank well in terms of clean sheet possibility. He's got, again, some attacking threat. He's hit DEFCON in every game. So I think he's a sort of one-size-fits-all sort of defender this week that he's probably got quite a lot of routes to points. You'd be disappointed, I think, if you didn't get a minimum of 4. You've probably got a decent possibility of getting a bit more than that. To finish here, Van Dijk at the bottom, 4 DEFCON points so far, 2 goal attempts. One word of warning, I think, for Van Dijk in this game week is no defender has got any DEFCON points so far against Burnley. I think it's understandable reasons why that is. Burnley don't attack very much, and if Burnley aren't attacking very much, then defenders aren't doing DEFCON things like making clearances and winning tackles, etc. So something to bear in mind as a trend that you might want to keep following. So I'm not saying he's not a good pick this week. Van Dijk, Liverpool will have got the highest probability of a clean sheet based on what the bookmakers' odds are saying. So I think it's fair to own one. But they might be a 2 or a 6 in terms of points because I don't know if you'd expect Liverpool to score a couple of goals, which might limit the defenders in terms of getting BPS. I say based on 3 game weeks of data, defenders don't get DEFCON against Burnley, so he's not going to get more points that way. And realistically, it's impossible to predict any defender scoring a goal or getting an assist. So you may be happy with 6 points from Van Dijk or from Konate or from Alisson or someone else this week. But I think if you want to play defenders with higher probabilities of more, i.e. Lacroix, who might get the clean sheet and the DEFCON, which Van Dijk is less likely to, you could view Van Dijk as being a bit too expensive. But say if you want a Liverpool defender, he's the most nailed. Fabian Schär, 4 goal attempts is quite promising. I say Newcastle, based on the last slide, best defensive data versus Wolves with the worst attacking data. I think he's a fair option at 5.5. And then Gabriel, another one. I don't think has the highest probability of getting DEFCON. The fact he plays more on the front foot, I think, is something noteworthy. Might be a subject this for a future pod from me, actually, when we've got a bit more information around DEFCON. That what sort of defenders are getting it. My gut feeling right now, without truly having the evidence to back it up. Is those in the middle of a back three have a higher chance. And when teams play with two centre-backs, you have what is known as the cat and the dog, right? The dog is quite ferocious, very front-footed, wants to go and win the ball. The cat is maybe a little bit more laid back, operates more like a sweeper. You think those sort of defenders are more likely to make clearances because they're basically playing as the last man. They're the ones that will be sort of deepest in the penalty box when crosses come in that need clearing. And we know already clearances are the main contributions towards DEFCON. So I think Gabriel is the wrong type of centre-back for DEFCON, but that's more a gut feeling and an opinion rather than anything that's evidence-based at the moment. But again, he could be another one that no doubt has one of the better probabilities of a clean sheet this week, but arguably is quite a lot of money for someone who's more likely to get a 2 or a 6 unless you have a really strong feeling that someone like a Van Dijk or a Gabriel is going to score. So just bear that in mind. On to the attacking players now, and we'll look at goal odds this week. Again, green is what I've labelled as being very good, into yellow, into orange, and then into red. So green is teams with likelihood of scoring 2 or more goals as an average. Yellow is between 1.5 and 2. Orange is between 1 and 1.5. And red is expectations below 1. Just 3 teams going past the 2 threshold from an attack. We had 4 defences going past the clean sheet probability of 40%. Now we've got 3 attacks likely to score 2 or more goals. Top is Liverpool, 2.35 against Burnley. Not a massive shock there. Then Man City in the Manchester derby at 2.1. And then Arsenal at 2. Then into quite a few teams in yellow. I say some in orange and then some in red at the end. So natural instinct here is to focus on Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal attackers. Not far behind again, a Newcastle. Crystal Palace not doing too bad, and Chelsea again, sort of on the periphery of things. So, like what I did with defenders, we've listed the teams here in terms of goal odds and then what their XG is versus the XGC. And a big surprise here actually for Liverpool at the moment. So, odds suggest they're the best attack this week, expected to score 2.35 goals against Burnley. But the data through the opening 3 weeks, where they've played a Newcastle team that played with 10 men for quite a long time, a Bournemouth team that was in quite an open game in game week 1. And then obviously Arsenal was a bit trickier. But very surprising that Liverpool had the 14th best XG in the league at the moment, just 3.43. So my gut feeling before the season started was they'd be the best attack, the most likely to score the most goals. That would obviously mean creating lots of chances, getting into lots of advantageous positions to score goals. Data suggesting at the moment that's not happening. Say 14th best attack. They are playing the worst defence in Burnley, 6.72 XGC. So the data isn't backing up this choice to have multiple Liverpool attackers. But I can understand why you'd think that's a good idea to have them and trust eye test and opinion a bit more than data in a small sample size. On to the other 2 teams, and it's looking quite good for Man City. They're second in the goal odds, 2.10, 5.84. XG at the moment is top 5. And they're playing the 13th best defence in Man United for XGC. So good chances here for Man City. Also for Arsenal, also meet the goal threshold of 2 in the top 5 for XG. And they're playing sort of a weaker defence. Nottingham Forest 15th best defence so far. This suggests to me that Haaland and Gyökeres look like good picks here. You've got 2 strikers that we think are both on penalties. The main competition for minutes in these teams are unavailable. So Marmoush injured over the international break for Egypt. Cherksey also out for Man City. So I'm not sure who's going to take minutes off Haaland in their attack. Obviously, Havertz still out injured for Arsenal as well, and Jesus. So we've got Moreno or someone like that could play centre forward for a bit if needed. But you'd like to think here that Haaland and Gyökeres are pretty primed here for 90 minutes. They're both on pens. They're both in teams that should score goals. I quite like the thought of having both of those looking at the data. Couple to avoid here is Crystal Palace. Maybe don't rank so well, which makes them a bit tricky. The 7th best attack, 4.41, but Sunderland actually the 4th best defence on data. So anyone with, obviously Palace maybe a bit depleted in terms of midfield creativity and things at the moment as well. If Eze's obviously been sold, Ismaila Sarr's got a hamstring injury, we assume he's out. New signing Jeremy Pino, is he ready to start yet? We don't know. So their attacking midfield sort of collection of players is quite depleted. Are they going to create anything for someone like Mateta, who would look on paper like a good pick here? Penalties, I say centre forward in a fixture that looks good on paper, but it might be one of those that we sort of make more of that is necessary. I don't mind picking Mateta, but again, is his upside that good? Question marks there. The interesting one, I think, is Newcastle against Wolves. So Wolves, not great defensively, second worst defence. But Newcastle, the third worst attack. Now, they've obviously bought 2 new players in the international break, Voltemade and Visser. Will one or two, both of them play? We don't know. What formation will Newcastle play? We don't know. They played 3-5-2 in the last game against Leeds with Sula and Jacob Murphy up front. They could just repeat that and now play both of Voltemade and Visser. Or they go back to more of the conventional 4-3-3. If they do, what does that mean? So a bit hard to project. So we've got Arsenal Forest is a bit hard to project because how's Ange going to play in his first game as Forest manager? Now we've got Newcastle with new signings. How's that going to work? So my gut feeling is to leave it alone from an attacking standpoint. But for, again, people that want to be a bit different, there's probably a possibility to attack there, particularly if you feel like, particularly in the case of Voltemade, I think it's been priced quite cheaply at 7 million. If you think you want to save a little bit of budget in attack and have someone more at that price point, he could hit the ground running. So I don't hate it as a pick, but again, it's another one. I think there's probably 3 safer attackers to go for this week more than him. But for those feeling a bit fruity, wanting to be a bit differential, they could be onto something by having him in this game week. Just to finish, I've kind of made shared what is my current free hit draft. It's a bit random. And again, I've tried to focus really on some elements of data, some elements of eye test, and some elements of trying to avoid teams I don't trust. For example, I think Fulham are fine. I think Joachim Andersen is a steady pick this week. Raul Jimenez, I think, got injured on international duty for Fulham, playing for Mexico. So there's a good chance Rodrigo Muniz gets a lot of minutes here. And he could be a decent differential striker. Again, a bit cheaper to accommodate other things. But do I want to mess around? Do I trust Fulham? Do I really trust someone like Bournemouth, for example? I think Semenyo is a decent pick again this week. But do I trust him against Brighton more than I trust other teams? Not, I probably don't. So I'm trying to keep my players to teams that I've got an element of trust in. I know how they're going to play. I've got expectations how the matches are going to go. And then take it from there. So for those on audio, my team at the moment is Nick Pope in goal. I wanted some Newcastle coverage. We saw how good the data was. And he's the cheapest sort of way in and cheaper than the likes of Alisson and Raya, who might be options as well. Double Palace defence is there with Munoz for his attacking capabilities and Lacroix as a bit more of a safer sort of DEFCON pick. Konate, because Liverpool, I think I wanted 3 Liverpool players. I wasn't, considering Liverpool got the 14th best XG, and a lot of their attackers are priced relatively high. I felt like I wanted a defender to give him my 3rd Liverpool. He's a decent saving on Van Dijk. I've said before, I'm not confident Liverpool defenders get DEFCON here. Is Van Dijk's extra goal threat over Konate worth 0.6 and other sacrifices in this team? I decided not. So I think Konate will play. And if he gets 6 points, I'm happy for that at his price point. Then I've got in with double Arsenal defence. Calafiori is the highest upside defender based on data. I'm happy with that. And then Mosquera again is, I said it a little bit about Arsenal with more of a gut feeling at the moment that Gabriel is the front foot defender, less likely to make clearances. Saliba has got DEFCON in 1 game for Arsenal and was started very promisingly in the game against Liverpool as well. When Mosquera came on, he was that deeper defender that played that same sort of last man sort of role. I wouldn't be massively surprised here if he got DEFCON. I think Mosquera's chances of DEFCON this week are higher than any Liverpool defenders. So he could be away into 8 points here. We know Arsenal defence has been very resilient so far. They haven't conceded a lot in the way of chances, second best for XGC. I quite like double Arsenal defence, and for 5.4, I think he's a good way into it. I think he's going to start. Obviously, Saliba's out for a couple more weeks yet with his injury. Got a bit tricky in midfield, so Salah's in more to cover the ownership as captain. I'm not massively optimistic about his upside. I think he'll do fine, but it's more ownership coverage, this one owning him. Then what do you do after that? So the second Liverpool attacker, I think, was quite tricky. I'd quite like Ekatike. but I think he'll start. And Isak not really up to fitness yet. Ekatike's been playing well enough, doesn't deserve to get dropped. But I do think there's quite a good chance here that sub's coming, Ekatike to Isak, at some point in the second half. Small risk, it could be pre 60 minutes. I think realistically 65, 70, 75, somewhere like that. Do I want to pay 8.7 million or whatever his current price is for a striker with no penalties who's likely to play in the region of 65 to 70 minutes when I could have Gyökeres and Haaland with maybe slightly weaker fixtures, you would argue, but both with home games, both in settled teams, both taking penalties, both likely to play 90 minutes with limited sort of opposition for their spot. I've made the decision here that I'd rather have Haaland than Gyökeres. So that pushes me towards the second Liverpool attacker being another midfielder. Gakpo's the cheapest. Risky again, will he start? He started both games, I think, for Holland over this international break. Obviously, the young kid came on and scored against Newcastle. Will Rouhani start look at this week and think, I can maybe rest a couple of people that have played internationals? At least Gakpo's games have been in Europe and he's not been travelling halfway around the world to play them. So he's in at the moment, Gakpo. The other option I have here for 0.1 cheaper is to put Mateta up front. But I say the Palace attacking data wasn't great. But Mateta's on pens maybe is likely to play more minutes than Gakpo. And strangely, that 0.1 saving would give me more of a better first sub. I could afford Josh King from Fulham as my first sub, who's way more trustworthy for minutes than the three I've got now in Adozi, Potts and Mark Giroud. This team has used every inch of money available and has gone full budget on the bench to the point where I may not have a playing sub, which could be a bit dangerous here. I say I've got a couple of players in this squad, Calafiori being another one. Arsenal could play Lewis Skelly in this game, could even play Hincipie at left back. Is Mosquera definitely guaranteed to play? Could Arsenal play Timber at centre back and bring Ben White in at right back? Canate, will they leave him out and give Joe Gomez a game or something? Say Gakpo, they could play any number of options out wide if they think this is a rotatable game. So I'm not overly sort of happy at the moment with this bench, but my way to be aggressive on this free hit in my mindset at the minute is to get the best 11 players out on the pitch that I can get rather than sacrifice a little bit to have a better first or second sub, which I hopefully won't need. That might backfire, that strategy, but that's where my head is at the moment. So I've gone for Gakpo. I think his ceiling for points this week is higher than Mateta's. So he's in. And then with Gyökeres and Haaland up front, that left me the perfect money to get Reinders in midfield. And I'd like to think the Manchester derby is a good fixture for him. Man United have been quite open down the middle. City could have an overload in those zones, 3v2. They're not always the most mobile in there. If Man United persist in playing Bruno Fernandes as more of an 8 rather than a 10, he's not the most switched on positionally in that role. With Cunha out and things like that, it's possible United play Bruno as a number 10 for this game, and that would allow him to bring someone like a Mainu or someone like that into midfield alongside Casemiro or Ugarte or someone like that. But I think there's an overload in the middle areas for Man City to exploit. Burnley, I think, even exploited Man United's midfield in central areas in that fixture in game week 3. If Burnley managed to do it, you'd like to think Man City have a good chance. We know what Reinders is like for off the ball running and ball carrying and things like that. In terms of matchups, I think this one's a good one for him. So I'm happy with this team. And I say it gives me a starting lineup that's got triple Liverpool in it, triple Arsenal in it, double Palace, double Man City, and one Newcastle. I think I'm happy with that breakdown. So it's 5-3-2 at the moment. Again, 5 at the back is not something I'm very used to playing in FPL. Probably don't really remember ever choosing to play it. I'm sure there's been game weeks where sort of unexpected lineups and injuries have sort of caused auto subs to make me play back 5s. But I've never knowingly played it. But we've seen in the data this week that there's a lot of high probability clean sheets for teams that have really good XGC, and they're playing against teams that have quite bad attacking data. To afford the treble up of Haaland, Gyökeres and Salah, there's going to be sacrifices. And I think these players, sort of between 5 and 6 million, Calafiori, Mosquera, Canate, Lacroix and Munoz, guarantee me far more than any midfielders around similar prices. You can have your Dewsbury Halls and players like that, and maybe you could drop one of these defenders down. You could drop Calafiori down to Joachim Anderson, and that might allow you to get a Semenyo into your midfield or something like that. But if you offered me now one of Palace or Arsenal keeping a clean sheet, that would probably give me a solid sort of 14, 15 points from those two defenders, maybe another 6 from the two that didn't keep the clean sheet. The other defender keeps a clean sheet as well. A couple of attacking returns. I think my free hit will be all right here. And I think in midfield, I think it's so up in the air who you pick this week. There's clearly options you could go for. I mentioned Madueke at the start. So I think Semenyo is reasonable. People might be tempted by a Newcastle sort of wide option. People might want a triple Liverpool and put Wirtz in. Obviously, one of these players is probably going to go off and do really well and get a double figure return. But in terms of what I trust and what I believe will happen, I've got way more faith in these defenders sort of getting 6-8 points rather than a midfielder at probably a more expensive price point getting 6-8 points. I feel like I could pick a collection of decent attackers this week and they'll get 2 points. Kind of what happened to me in game week 2 a little bit when I got my game week rank of like 9 million or whatever it was. My attackers had good fixtures. They were good attackers for minutes. They were good attackers for positions. They just all blanked at the same time. I think it's more than feasible. Again, something similar could happen this week if you go in with Wirtz, Madueke, Alanga, midfielders of this sort of note. So you were in here. So it's Pope, Munoz, Lacroix, Canate, Mosquera, Calafiori, Salah, Gakpo, and Reinders in midfield, and Gyökeres, Haaland up front. The bench is awful. Dubravka, and then 4.4 million options. Mark Giu as the striker. And then midfielders could be any of the 4.4 guys. This one's got a Dozzy from Wolves and Potts from West Ham. But yeah, that's my team at the moment. I'm sure that the general feeling would be, what is he doing? That's ludicrous. That's not normal. That's not the free hit team I would pick. But again, we don't have any evidence here. We're learning as we go. And this is my way of being a bit different, being a bit maverick and attacking something different. Not punty players, but I've got double Arsenal defence that I'm chasing. I've got double Crystal Palace defence I'm chasing. Double Man City attack that I'm chasing. Double Liverpool attack that I'm chasing. So I've put my eggs in like 4 baskets there. And hopefully I get some returns from that. And we'll see how the back 5 goes. It'll either be a catastrophic failure or it'll be sort of a punt that's gone well. So obviously not guaranteed to be locked in as my team. But that's where I am right now. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back again with another pod before the game week 5 deadline. Thanks very much.